Bridge Over Troubled Water is one of the most beautiful songs ever written, and the original recording by Simon and Garfunkel has an awesome piano part. Here's the beginning of it. Paul Simon wanted the song to have a bit of a gospel flavor, and they certainly achieved that. Fast forward a decade or so, and Simon, now a solo artist, is working with legendary session keyboardist Richard T., who played on literally everybody's records in the 70s and 80s. And when they played Bridge Over Troubled Water live, T really took it to church and delivered a gospel piano masterclass. So today, I want to take a closer look at one of those live versions. I'll link to it in the description. And you can also find the link to the sheet music of my transcription down below. Let's see what we can learn from this. So the original recording starts with this beautiful melodic piano part that I played at the beginning of the video. And after 4 bars, it settles into a 1-chord, 4-chord shuttle for another 4 bars before the verse starts. Richard T. begins his version differently. He plays a 1-bar blues scale lick in unison with both hands, like this. This pickup establishes the key of E flat and the fact that there's gonna be some blues language in what we're about to hear. And obviously there's a lot of blues in gospel music. Interestingly, he plays this one lick with a shuffle feel, whereas the rest of the song has more of a straight feel. So then, for the proper intro, he goes straight into that 1-chord, 4-chord thing. But instead of 4 bars like in the original, he plays 8 bars of it. And the degree of complexity and detail he packs into those 8 bars is absolutely next level. So again, the basic progression is just E flat to A flat, rinse, repeat. One of the most important questions to ask when analyzing music is, what do they do to make this interesting? And Richard T. masterfully demonstrates 2 of the most common ways of doing that: embellishing or decorating a static chord, and creating transitions from one chord to the next. For example, in the first bar after his intro lick, he plays this. Now remember, the chord change in this bar is just E flat. So what he's doing is embellishing that triad with melodic movement in the inner voices. This happens in the original too, but T's version is a bit more tricked out. To better understand it, think of this basic blues pattern. Now I could play a blues like this, but that's lame by comparison, right? What makes it interesting is the movement. So Richard plays a more sophisticated version of this pattern where he drops the top voice an octave down, and then he adds the root at the bottom and at the top. So this turns into this. Add some more interesting rhythmic and melodic content and you get this. So then we get to the next bar, which is A flat. He continues with the same basic idea, using the fact that the second chord that's created by this movement is an A flat triad with E flat in the bass. That becomes his main voicing to express the 4 chord, A flat, and then he embellishes it with the 3rd chord of our basic riff. Add syncopated rhythm and a little triad arpeggio and you get this. So what we had so far was him embellishing or decorating a static chord. Now we get an example of the second way of creating interest, transitions. He moves back down from the A flat chord to the tonic chord E flat with this harmonic move. That's G flat 6 to F minor 7 to E flat. Once again, notice that even though we're clearly in the key of E flat major, he leans into the blues connotations by playing G flat in this walk down instead of the diatonic G, just like he played D flat earlier instead of D. Here are the first 2 bars of the intro together. So then bar 3 is almost identical to bar 1. In bar 4, he starts with a fat A-flat chord. And then we get another awesome transition. Remember how in bar 2 he walked down from A-flat to E-flat with these two chords? Well, here he walks up to the E-flat with these two chords. B, technically it's C-flat, and D-flat at 9. Notice that he keeps the E-flat at the top as an upper pedal tone. This reinforces the sense of the key we're in, which is E-flat. And before that he plays this octave bass line. First it's 5, 6, 8 of A-flat, which is such a common little motif for bass lines. And then he walks up chromatically from A-flat to the C-flat. Here are bars 3 and 4 of the intro together. Moving on to bar 5, back to E-flat. He starts out with this crunchy E-flat 7 voicing. Now he could have played a good old standard E-flat 7 voicing like this. 1, 3, 5, flat 7, right? That sounds so nice. Instead, he adds the sharp 9 at the bottom and stabs you in the brain with this voicing. Come on, that's a gangster chord. And then we get another walk up, chromatically from E-flat to G7 like this. This is a very common way in blues and gospel music to get from 1 to 4 via a 3 dominant chord, which is often played with a sharp 5 as it is here. Here's the whole bar. Alright, bar 6, another treasure trove of cool shit. We're back on A-flat 7, right? And first he uses a really common trick that we hear all the time in blues, gospel, funk, which is this. On a dominant 7th chord, in this case A-flat 7, play a minor triad of the 6th and 5th scale degrees. So here that's F minor and E-flat minor. And this move sounds much better in first or second inversion than in root position. And then we can create all kinds of patterns using those two chords. We can also use the chromatic passing chord between the two. Guitar players use this a lot in James Brown type funk playing. Here's how Richard T uses it in bar 6 of the intro. After that, he plays a similar thing to what he played on the E-flat 7 sharp 9 in the previous bar. A bass note, in this case the 3rd C and then a chord stab. Check out the similarity between the E-flat 7 voicing and this A-flat 7 voicing. The first one is an octave higher, but if you put them side by side, you can clearly see that it's the same type of voicing. They both have this crunchy half step at the bottom. And then at the end of the bar, he plays another walk up back to E-flat. Remember in bar 4 he played C-flat and D-flat leading back to E-flat. So hold steps. Here he does a similar thing but with half steps. The fancy music professor term for this is double chromatic approach. Notice that just like with the whole step approach, he pedals the root E-flat at the top. Here are bars 5 and 6 together. Bar 7 is another variation of the riff introduced in bar 1, and in bar 8 he plays an A-flat major triad arpeggio to set up the beginning of the verse. Here are bars 7 and 8 together. Alright, so now we get to the verse. There's a bit less of the flashy trickery here because Paul Simon is singing and T doesn't want to interfere with that. But what he does play is still so rich and interesting. The verse is 9 bars long and for much of it the chord progression continues to shuttle back and forth between the 1 chord E-flat and the 4 chord A-flat. But there's also some other stuff going on. So let's look at what exactly Richard T plays in this section. The first bar is pretty straightforward. An E-flat major triad. He creates interest by alternating between chords and single notes, by using syncopation, and by playing that familiar 5-6-8 gesture that we already heard in the bass a bit earlier. Bar 2 is very similar to bar 2 of the intro. And once again, he plays that bluesy walk down at the end of the bar. In bar 3, we go back to an E-flat major triad. And on beat 4 we have a transitional chord, D-flat, that takes us to the 4-chord A-flat in the next bar. Using a flat 7 chord to transition from 1 to 4 is very common in general, and specifically in gospel music. This bar is also a great example of how he uses filler notes to create rhythmic propulsion. Here's what it would sound like without them. Now I'll put in the 8th note filler notes in the right hand. And now I'll add the syncopated 16th note fillers in the left hand. You see how much difference that makes? It's in the details, brothers and sisters. It's in the details. In bar 4 we're on A-flat again, but with an extra shift to D-flat and back, which is a harmonization of the vocal melody. Here are bars 3 and 4 together. In bar 5 we go back to E-flat, and he plays a little melody that includes the 9th. In bar 6 we get a 2-5 progression, F minor 7 to A-flat over B-flat. Notice that despite the variation in the bass movement here, the right hand still plays some A-flat major triads. We've now heard 4 different combinations of a right hand A-flat chord with various bass notes. A-flat over E-flat, A-flat in root position, A-flat with F in the bass, which adds up to F minor 7, and A-flat over B-flat, which is B-flat 9 sus 4. In bars 7 and 8 of the verse, they double up on the harmonic rhythm. It's 2 beats of E-flat and 2 beats of A-flat instead of 4. Check out how he adapts his opening riff to fit this. Notice the little double chromatic approach there in the middle. And then we got bar 9, where he walks down from the tonic chord E-flat to the 5-chord B-flat for the next section. Check out how important inversions can be. If I play this walk down with all chords in root position, it sounds like this. But with the inversions, it's a subtle but important difference. So now we get to the next 6-bar section. We could look at this as the pre-chorus. It starts with 2 bars of B-flat 7. If I play this in a very generic pop ballad kind of way, it might sound like this. Correct, but boring. Listen to how much more interesting what he plays sounds. So what does he do there? There's some rhythmic trickery with syncopation and 16th note fillers in the left hand, and then there's the chord movement. He harmonizes the diatonic melody with alternating B-flat or B-flat 7 and E-flat chords over a B-flat pedal. That's the same move as the E-flat to A-flat over E-flat we've heard a bunch of times already. This is such a common device in gospel music. It really contributes to the churchy flavor they're going for. In the next 2 bars, we return to the tonic chord. And in the original version, they first play a line cliché in the bass and the bottom of the right hand voicing, like this. Richard T spices this up a bit by playing this. So he's still playing the line cliché, but it's a lot more embellished with other melodic content. And in the second bar of this 2-bar tonic stretch, there's another walk up from E flat to A flat like this. Here are bars 3 and 4 of the pre-chorus. The last 2 bars of this section start on the 4 chord A flat, then it goes to F7, which is a secondary dominant that sets up the 5 chord B flat 7. Check out how elegantly he moves from F7 to B flat 7 with a couple of chromatic approach notes. That's just awesome. And then on the last 2 beats, we get another walk up from E flat to A flat via a G minor 7 flat 5 chord, which at this point sounds pretty familiar. Here are bars 5 and 6 of the pre-chorus. So now we're in the final section of the song. We could call this the chorus. It's where the lyric moves to the title like a bridge over troubled water. This part is 7 bars long and it's the most harmonically complex of the song. To better understand it, let's start with the simplest diatonic layer. First, we have a 4-bar phrase with this chord progression. A bar of A flat, 2 beats of E flat and 2 beats of C minor, then a bar of F minor and a bar of C minor. The first 3 bars of this then repeat, except in the second half of the F minor bar it goes to B flat. Now let's look at how Richard T uses diatonic embellishments and non-diatonic chords to make this a lot more interesting. And a lot of this also happens in the original version. First, he connects the A flat chord in bar 1 and the E flat chord in bar 2 with a couple of passing chords like this. This right here is my favorite chord in the whole song. This move from A flat to D over A is so beautiful. It's like a window into a different world opens up, only to close again right away. Just gorgeous. By the way, for comparison, here's how they harmonized this bar in the original version. Also wonderful. It's interesting to compare these 2 fancy ways of getting from a 4 chord to a 1 chord. Okay, then he plays the tonic chord in bar 2 in second inversion and adds this plagal suspension that mimics the vocal melody. Then he adds a 7th to the C minor chord, and then he plays a B flat chord before the C minor over a C pedal, which creates the same effect as what he just did on the E flat chord. So he turns what could be a bar that sounds like this into this. And again, a lot of this trickery also appears in the original version. Now we got one more extra chord at the end of this 2-bar phrase, and that's a chromatic approach E minor 7 leading to the F minor 7 in the following bar. So here's exactly what he plays in the first 2 bars of the chorus. Okay, in bars 3 and 4 of the chorus, we get F minor 7 to C minor. To create an extra harmonic step moving from one to the other, they use the oldest trick in the book. Slap a 5 chord in front of the target chord. In this case that's G7, the 5 chord of C minor. This is another secondary dominant chord. And to make matters even more complex, T plays this awesome walk up from G7 to C minor. To understand what's going on in bar 4, let's look at the first chord of bar 5, which is A flat, and then go backwards from there. On beat 4 of bar 4, we have E flat 7, which makes sense, it's the 5 chord of A flat. But he doesn't just play an E flat 7 voicing, he plays this. We've already heard this trick back in the intro. It's that 6 minor 5 minor move over dominant chords. And he also adds the chromatic passing chord between the C minor and B flat minor chords. On beat 3 of this bar, we have a B flat minor 7 chord, which makes sense because we can always put a 2 chord in front of a 5 chord. So taken together, we get a 2-5-1 progression to A flat. And then we're left with a gap between the C minor on beat 1 and the B flat minor on beat 3, which is just asking for a chromatic passing chord. And that's exactly what we get with this B7, or technically C flat 7 chord. So here's what he plays in bars 3 and 4 of the chorus. Bars 5 and 6 of the chorus are pretty much the same as 1 and 2, except he doesn't play the E minor 7 at the end. And in bar 7, the last bar of the chorus, we get another 2-5 progression leading back to the tonic chord. So that's F minor 7 and B flat 7. On the B flat 7, he once again deploys that 6 minor 5 minor thing. In this case that's G minor and F minor. Notice that we have now heard this trick on the 4 chord, the 1 chord and the 5 chord. So here's the last bar of the chorus. The next section is an interlude that's similar to the intro, and then it goes into the second verse. Now, I'm not going to do the whole song because we'd be here all day, but we got the gist of it. Everything that follows is a variation on what we've covered in this video. And that's it for today. Like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Peace and love.